Tuning in to another episode of the most dangerous combat sport in the world, American politics. King by the King Media TV, add my name, and Mouthpiece Sports Network. I'm Ted King. And so after a whole month of government shutdown, standoff, we're going to go through the chronological stages of the impactful parts as to what's going on in our country. On October the 8th, Senator Ruben Gallego and Mark Kelly, both are Arizona Democrat, were publicly sparred with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Republican Mike Lawler over the delay in swearing of Democrat Andrelita Grijalva. What you're going to hear is Republican Ruben Gallegos state, "Let's be clear. The reason Rep-elect Andrelita Grijalva is not here is because Mike Johnson wants to do two things. Number one, cover up the pedophiles on the Epstein list," Gallego told reporters, "and number two, put his members in a really rough position when it comes to voting and extending these Affordable Care Act tax credits." So he says, he's making a statement. You'll hear this coming up right now.
Let's be clear. The reason Andrelita Grijalva is not here is because Mike Johnson wants to do two things. Number one, cover up for pedophiles on the Epstein list. And number two, put his members in a really rough position when it comes to voting and extending these ACA tax credits.
Oh, hey, gentlemen.
Hey, Speaker.
Appreciate it. Good to see you all.
Hey, so his Congresswoman and a friend of ours, Andrelita Grijalva, we're waiting.
Yeah, reopen the government so we can get back to work.
I mean, but this
great.
excuse just keeps on moving.
Yeah,
Well, it's not great if you want representation.
Not last week.
no,
there
There's
was
750.
Wait, let me answer the question. We're happy that she got elected. She's filling her father's seat. That's fantastic. We have a long tradition here and a process of how we administer the oath to a member. You know, you served here for a while. We're going to do that as soon as we get back to work, but we need the lights turned back on, so we encourage both of you to go open the government
Didn't we
so
do
we can
that
get everybody
with the
back to work.
Virginia Republican swore the person
No,
in
no.
under this circumstance?
The exception is there were two Floridians who were elected in a special election. This happened a couple months back. They were here on a day. They had their families here. They had a scheduled day for the oath of office, and the House was called out of session that day. They had all their family and friends here. So we went ahead and went through the process in a pro forma.
With all due
Let me
respect,
finish. Wait, let me answer the question if you're going to ask it. And so that was the exception we did because the family was here. Ms. Grijalva, Rep-elect Grijalva, has not yet had a scheduled day because she was elected after the House was out of session. So I am anxious to administer the oath to her
How much is this
as soon as
actually-
you guys
just
vote
don't
to
want
open the
her to be
government.
on the Epstein. You don't want to be on the Epstein discharge. How much?
It's
Because you're
totally absurd. Come
Basically-
here, Mike Lawler from New York. Tell
With
him.
all due respect, you voted multiple times to keep the government shut down, okay? The Republican members from Arizona voted to keep the government open.
They did.
So don't sit here and try to lecture us about
So
whether
tell
or
me
not
what's
we
gonna
did our
happen to
job.
premiums
We
in
did our
your
job.
district?
You did not.
What's going to be the premiums? What happens to ACA premiums?
Oh, you mean the bill that I'm signed on to extend it? Oh, yeah,
When
cute,
is-
right,
when is that
because you
gonna
know what?
happen?
We actually have put forth legislation to do it. You guys just keep pontificating.
Get
We
your
got to
people
get the
in.
government open and turn the lights on so we can get everybody
Get your
back here and get
people
the
in
regular
and
session.
stop covering up for the pedophiles.
There's not, that's ridiculous.
Nobody's covering up for pedophiles.
ridiculous.
So
You
knock
know,
it the hell off.
she knows, you
You're
know that she is
absolutely
the,
absurd.
you know she is
I'm
the
going to get
vote.
back to work. These gentlemen had a publicity stunt here. You see the issue. They need to go and vote to reopen the government.
Get your
Plain and
people back.
simple.
One of the-
Get your
The
people
House
back.
has done its work. Every single Republican in the House but one voted to keep the government open, to make sure TSA agents, Border Patrol agents,
And even if they
the
do
troops
anything,
and everybody
they're
else
not
obey.
here next week, even if we strike a deal. You have to
And
get
the
them coming
Democrats
back.
have voted repeatedly to keep the government closed. Plain and simple. That
Premiums
is
are
the
gonna
issue.
go up.
First things first,
Premiums
open the
are going
government.
up.
We'll get back to
Mike,
work.
you're
Thanks
gonna-
thanks for
Can
visiting.
I ask you
The premiums are gonna-
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
That was fun.
Now, it's apparent that Mike Lawler is either the point man, the pitch man, or the protector of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, because on that same day, reported October the 8th, he confronts Akeem Jeffries. Let's watch this.
The government remains shut down, and chances of a solution do not seem to be rising, but temperatures certainly are. Republican Congressman Mike Lawler confronted Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries after a news conference.
You're not going to talk.
Wasted.
You're not going to talk to
Wasted
me. You're not going to talk to me
fraud
and talk
and
over
non-New
me
York residents
because you don't
getting
want to
paid.
hear what I have to say.
Oh, I'm listening.
So why
Go
don't you
ahead.
just keep your mouth shut?
Oh,
because you
is
showed
that-
up.
is that the way to
you
talk?
showed up. You showed up.
Yeah.
And so you voted for this one
I
big
signed
ugly
on
bill.
for this. I'm here
on
on
his
my
behalf
behalf
'cause
of
he's
my
afraid to debate.
constituents
Is
because
that
you
right?
shut the government down. And my constituents are suffering as a result of your ridiculous ploy because you're so afraid of Zohran Mandami. By the way, when are you endorsing him?
By the way,
do you endorse him for mayor?
First of all, are
Are you going to endorse him for mayor?
Listen, you're a complete and total embarrassment right now.
Oh,
With us now is the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Leader Jeffries, thank you so much for being with us. We'll get to you and your friend Mike Lawler in just a second. But first, I do want your reaction to the word that all the Israeli hostages could be home within days. Your reaction to that and what you think President Trump's role was in brokering this deal.
Well, good morning. Great to be with you. It's a very, very positive step in the right direction. We're all hopeful that this agreement will be finalized, that the hostages will be released in a matter of days and returned home to their loved ones. Of course, that we can surge humanitarian assistance into Gaza to alleviate the pain and suffering that Palestinian civilians have been experiencing in a theater of war for the last 2 years, and that we can achieve not just a ceasefire, but a pathway toward a just and lasting peace for both Israel and the Palestinian people.
So, Leader Jeffries, let me ask you about the status of the shutdown and that confrontation with New York Congressman Mike Lawler. Among the many things that were exchanged back and forth there, he was asking you about the possibility of a 1-year extension on the expiring Obamacare subsidies. Specifically, what is your opposition to that?
Well, MAGA Mike Lawler is an irrelevant individual. He doesn't even have the support of the House Republican leadership, who have refused to address the issue of extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. The Democratic position has been clear. We will sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, one, to reopen the government, negotiate a bipartisan agreement that has to actually make life better for the American people, not hurt everyday Americans. And a meaningful part of that is to address the Republican health care crisis, which includes, but is not limited to, the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, the failure of Republicans to address the Affordable Care Act tax credits that are expiring, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics closing all across America, including in rural parts of the country, because of the one big ugly bill. These are real issues affecting everyday Americans, working class Americans. And our view is that we need a meaningful response to addressing the Republican health care crisis, not simply a Band-Aid solution that Republican leadership in the House and the Senate don't even support right now.
Take Lawler out of it, Congressman Lawler out of it for a second. I don't think you guys will be having a beer anytime soon. But are you suggesting that when it comes to Obamacare subsidies, you are for permanence or broke? If they're not made permanent, you won't change your position on the shutdown?
No, what I'm suggesting is that we need to have a meaningful bipartisan discussion, that our position as articulated in the legislation that we've introduced is a permanent extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. But we're open to having a conversation in good faith to try to address this Republican health care crisis. It's ironic, however, that Republicans just a few months ago passed their one big ugly bill, which included permanent tax breaks for their billionaire donors, the wealthiest and the most well-off people in the United States of America. And so the question becomes, isn't it reasonable for working class Americans, for middle class Americans, for everyday Americans who are facing the possibility of dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles? We're talking about thousands of dollars per year in additional health care costs. Isn't it reasonable for them to have a similar level of certainty in their lives? And that's what Democrats are fighting hard to achieve.
One of the things that has not happened in Congress is the swearing in of Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva from Arizona. What do you think the holdup is there?
Well, it's been weeks since Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva has been decisively elected. And so it's very strange to us that House Republicans continue to delay her swearing in. It could have happened last week. It could have happened this week. It's not been scheduled for next week. And it does appear to many of us that part of the issue is that she will clearly become the 218th signature on the discharge petition that will trigger an up or down vote on the release of the Epstein files. Because we know that House Republicans and Senate Republicans and the Trump administration have been hiding the Epstein files from the American people for months now, even over the wishes of the brave survivors who want full transparency so there can be full accountability. And that's what we support.
I do want to go back to 1 second on the idea of the extension of Obamacare subsidies. You said the idea of a one-year extension is a non-starter. Punchbowl wrote up this morning in their morning note that they'd been talking to Leader Schumer over in the Senate, and he hadn't drawn similar red lines to you, saying that a one-year extension is a non-starter. And the quote from Punchbowl is, when we pointed out to Schumer that he hasn't drawn similar red lines, Schumer responded, "I don't negotiate in public." To what extent are you and Senator Schumer on the same page on this?
The interesting thing is that for weeks we've seen House and Senate Democrats on the same page, and we continue to be on the same page as it relates to defending the health care of the American people and demanding a bipartisan negotiation between House Republicans, House Democrats, Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats, and the administration so we can enact a spending agreement that actually makes life better for the American people, addresses the cost of living crisis that Donald Trump is inflicting on everyday Americans, healthcare premiums about to skyrocket, housing costs totally out of control, electricity bills have been skyrocketing, grocery prices remain high. We just need to sit down and have a bipartisan negotiation in order to make life better for the American people and address the Republican healthcare crisis that is devastating people. Working class America, rural America, urban America, small town America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities throughout America. This is an all hands on deck moment. And House and Senate Democrats have been continue to hold the line in a strong and principled way on behalf of the American people.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries from New York, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Well, tonight, the government shutdown is in its fourth week, and it will continue after the Senate failed to advance a funding bill for the 13th time.
The motion required 60 votes for approval and lacked support from most Democrats. The Democrats and Republicans are at odds over extending health care subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. We're learning more now about the ripple effects of the shutdown. Air traffic controllers missing their first paycheck today. Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters that he believes the administration can continue to pay the troops on Friday, but didn't elaborate on how. More than 24 states are now suing the Agriculture Department for the expected suspension of SNAP benefits that's expected this weekend. And while Georgia isn't one of those states filing a lawsuit over the loss of SNAP benefits, there are thousands of local families here looking for some kind of help. If the federal government is still shut down when Saturday comes, recipients will not have any more funds added to their SNAP cards.
Good afternoon, everybody. From the very beginning of this year, Donald Trump and Republicans have failed to deliver on their core promise to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. In fact, what Donald Trump and Republicans said is that costs were going to go down on day one. But costs haven't gone down. They're going up. Inflation is going up. Under Republican policies, housing costs are going up. Child care costs are going up. Grocery costs are going up. Electricity prices are through the roof. And now, because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased health care costs. In some cases, their health insurance premiums will increase by $1,000 or $2,000 per year. That is unacceptable. It will be unaffordable for working, class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans to be able to go see a doctor when they need one. And so House Democrats and Senate Democrats have been fighting hard to address the Republican health care crisis and to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans in the United States of America. Because the reality is, America is too expensive. And far too many people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. They can't thrive, they can barely survive. And that's why Democrats have been waging this fight. And we'll continue to wage this fight. No matter what comes over to us from the United States Senate to the House of Representatives at some point this week. Our position as House Democrats has been crystal clear. We will sit down with any Republicans, anytime, any place, anywhere, in order to find a bipartisan path forward, but we're not down with their my way or the highway approach to governance. That's failed the American people. It's been a disaster for the American people, and the American people know it. Which is why last Tuesday, Republicans all across the country got wiped out. One of the most decisive off-year elections ever in modern American history. And so as House Democrats, we know we're on the right side of this fight, the right side of the American people. And we're not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. And we're going to continue the fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And if it doesn't happen this week, this month, next month, then it's the fault of Donald Trump, House and Senate Republicans, who continue to make life more expensive for the American people. Questions?
Mr. Leader, some Democrats in your own caucus are suggesting Schumer is ineffective as Senate Democratic leader and should be replaced. You, of course, are critical of this deal. Do you view him as effective, and should he keep the job?
Yes and yes.
Mr. Jeffries, do you trust, in this deal, there is language for President Trump and the Trump administration to reverse some of the firings that happened during the shutdown? Do you trust that the Trump administration and the president is going to sign off on that and reverse the people who have been fired?
We'll have to evaluate the legislative language, and we'll have a caucus meeting later on this afternoon, and we'll get a presentation from Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. The overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, led by Leader Schumer, are opposing this bill in the Senate. And they'll articulate, there are a variety of different reasons that the bill is being opposed strongly by Democrats in the Senate, the overwhelming majority of them. And there'll be a variety of different reasons that we articulate in the House. Now, certainly we're going to continue to stand by our hardworking federal employees. By the way, Donald Trump and Republicans, this toxic administration, they fired more than 100,000 federal employees prior to the shutdown that they started beginning. So, of course, there's reason to be deeply skeptical of the administration and their motives as it relates to the hardworking federal civil servants and the federal workforce. And we will continue to be deeply skeptical of their intentions. They spent the whole year implementing the toxic parts, the most toxic parts of Project 2025, after lying to the American people last year, saying they didn't know anything about Project 2025. And part of that has been going after the federal workforce. So we'll see what the language looks like, but it doesn't change the core problem here, which is we need to decisively address the Republican health care crisis on behalf of working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans. Thanks. Third row.
So Dr. Oz said that millions.
Who?
Dr. Oz. There are millions of phantom enrollees under the ACA. Is that being looked at as it possibly makes it so that people that are on the ACA are paying more because it's inflating the numbers?
That's like the most random way to start a question on a serious topic. Nobody who's serious in this country takes Dr. Oz seriously. No one. And I mean, it's shocking that the guy even was confirmed. But this is part of the reality of Republicans here in the House and over in the Senate. They're nothing more than a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's cruelty and extreme agenda.
Are the phantom enrollees being addressed, though?
I have no idea what Dr. Oz is talking about, and neither do the American people. Now, with respect to the Affordable Care Act, here's what I do know. That Republicans have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 70 different times in the last 15 years. They don't operate in good faith when it comes to the health care of the American people. And of course, as Democrats have repeatedly indicated, we're open to sitting down and having a bipartisan conversation about how to fix our broken healthcare system overall. But I'm not going to respond to any comments from randos like Dr. Oz, who is woefully unqualified to be in whatever position he holds in the administration. He's a joke. These people are jokes. But the issue of the health care of the American people is very serious. And that's what we'll continue to focus on. Back row.
Do you see in the Senate bill the extension of SNAP benefits rather than the possibility of a January cliff in them? Do you see that as a victory, or is that something that also raises questions?
Here's what I understand about the SNAP situation. Republicans this year, on July 3rd, subsequently signed into law by the current president, enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping away health insurance from at least 14 million Americans, and at the same period of time, cut $186 billion from SNAP. Republicans did that this year. They literally ripped food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks that they made permanent. That's what Republicans did. They've launched an all-out assault on SNAP. They've weaponized hunger and starvation here in America, taken SNAP benefits away from more than 1 million veterans rather than honoring them tomorrow, which is what should be taking place in the United States of America. Republicans have done that. And so these people can't be trusted on the cost of living issue. These Republican extremists, they can't be trusted on the health care issue. And they certainly cannot be trusted on the SNAP issue.
As you know, this has been the longest shutdown in American history. You've seen chaos at airports, delayed SNAP benefits, people losing their jobs. And yet, the deal that Democrats agreed to has been a deal that's been on the table for a while now. Still no policy outcome on health care. So what do the American people gain from the past 41 days? Our
fight in the House of Representatives will continue to address the Republican health care crisis. We'll continue that fight today, tomorrow, this week, this month, next month, this year, next year. We're going to continue that fight to fix our broken health care system and lower the high cost of living for the American people. And the American people know that we're on the right side of this fight. It's part of the reason why you saw decisive Democratic victories last Tuesday and crushing Republican losses all across America. In Virginia, in New Jersey, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in California, in Mississippi, in Georgia, across the country, up and down the ballot. Because Republican policies have failed the American people. And as Democrats, we're going to continue to fight to make their life better. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Throughout the shutdown, you referred to your Senate colleagues as courageous for rejecting the 14 previous attempts to reopen the government without an extension to the affordable tax care credits. Those 8 Senate Democrats who voted to start the process of reopening the government, do you still include them in that characterization of courageous Democrats who have kept the fight going throughout this shutdown?
Well, I don't have much to say about those individuals, and they're going to have to explain themselves to their constituents and to the American people. I certainly believe that Senate Democrats, the overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, have waged a valiant fight over the last 7 weeks, defeating the partisan Republican spending bill 14 or 15 different times, week after week after week, and continue to oppose this effort of passing legislation that does not address the Republican health care crisis by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. But the fight is getting ready to shift back to the House, where we're going to work hard, hold the Republicans accountable. All of these loudmouths on the House Republican conference side who's been saying for the last several weeks that we have to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Now is their chance. This week, they have to come back from their 7-week prolonged taxpayer-funded Republican vacation. They can no longer hide. They can no longer hide. Mike Johnson apparently still hiding, refused to even answer a single question today. That's extraordinary. But they're not going to be able to hide this week when they return from their vacation. Thanks.
Speaking of the House, Speaker Johnson has not committed to holding a vote on subsidies, even though the Senate agreement would have them do so. What do you say to that? And then also, what do you think that would do to the relationship between Republicans and Democrats on the House side?
Well, the failure of Republicans to address the health care crisis that they've created in the House and in the Senate is no surprise, because House and Senate Republicans multiple times this year have been given an opportunity to vote to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and multiple times this year already, in the context of the debate around their one big ugly bill, they voted against, unanimously voted against, extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. So over the last several weeks, it's become increasingly difficult for them to hide from their position as it relates to the health care of the American people. And House Democrats, joined by our colleagues in the Senate, we're not going to stop the fight. We're going to continue to lean into the fight over the next few days and beyond until we actually get an outcome that makes life better for working class Americans.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. There's already extensive backlash coming from the Democratic base over feeling shortchanged by Senate Democrats who have secured this deal without touching on health care. What do you think that this backlash can mean for the party going into the midterms next year, and also for the voters who just handed Democrats a decisive victory? Do you think that this will make them feel also shortchanged, disenfranchised, demoralized? Do you think that this will lead to a switch up?
House Democrats are going to take back control of the House of Representatives next year. I've said it before, and if I said it, I meant it. Now, with respect to the senators on the other side of the Capitol, they're going to have to explain themselves. But the overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats continue to remain in the arena fighting to fix our broken health care system and address the Republican health care crisis. This fight for us is not partisan. It's not a partisan fight. It's a patriotic fight. We're waging this fight on behalf of the American people. The 5 states that are most impacted by a failure to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits are West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, Mississippi, and Tennessee. 45% of the people of the Americans who are going to lose health care or be at risk of losing health care if they don't, on the other side of the aisle, extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. 45% of them are registered Republicans. 35% registered Democrats, and 20% unaffiliated or independent. This is not a partisan fight for us. It's a patriotic fight. You know, one of the people that I met early on during this Trump Republican shutdown, came to Capitol Hill, was a 29-year-old named Mariah Plant. She's from rural Wyoming County in West Virginia. Her older brother is nonverbal, autistic, and requires 24-hour care. And Mariah is able to provide that care to her older brother lovingly and affectionately because of Medicaid that Republicans have now cut by the largest amount in American history. Her hospital in rural West Virginia is at risk of closing because of Republican policies in their one big ugly bill. And at the same time, this 29-year-old loving caregiver for her older brother gets her health care from the Affordable Care Act. And it's affordable because of the tax credits that Republicans now want to rip away from her. And so I'm fighting for people like Mariah Plant. Very different than the people that I represent in Brooklyn, New York. But she's an American, just like I represent hundreds of thousands of Americans. And that's what House Democrats are doing. We're fighting for the American people.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. Have you spoken to your Democratic colleagues in the Senate who voted to reopen the government? And if so, what do you make of the argument that Republicans would not discuss health care during the shutdown, so they said there's no choice but to vote yes?
I have not spoken to them. Thanks.
Different topic, Mr. Leader, if you don't mind. President Trump announcing widespread pardons for the group of people that were involved in providing alternate electors, as they called it, for the 2020 election. And he also has allegedly received a commutation request from Ghislaine Maxwell. Just wondering about your thoughts about the way the president has handled his pardon power, especially given how critical he was of President Biden.
Well, Donald Trump, in terms of the exercise of his pardon power and commutations, is completely and totally out of control. Like, he can find the time to pardon a serial fraudster like George Santos, but can't find any time to sit down with Democrats on Capitol Hill who represent half the country in order to address the health care crisis that Republicans have created. That's devastating people in urban America, rural America, working class America, small town America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities throughout America. And so what we're seeing with these toxic pardons and commutations coming from Donald Trump is more of the same. And look, the American people know these extremists on the Republican side have gone too far. And the crazy part about it is that they went too far on day one of Donald Trump's presidency. And it's been downhill ever since. On day one of Donald Trump's presidency, this guy pardons hundreds of violent felons who brutally beat police officers, 140 of whom were seriously injured. Life-threatening injuries in many cases. And then unleash these people on communities all across the country in ways that put those communities at risk. And what we've seen from Donald Trump since day one, since those toxic pardons of those violent individuals, is more of the same. From a person who promised to lower costs on day one, but doesn't give a damn about the American people. And what has taken place over the last 41 days is that the American people have seen Democrats fight for them, fight to make life better for them, fight to drive down the high cost of living for everyday Americans, and fix our broken healthcare system in the face of this overwhelming Republican assault on the healthcare of everyday Americans. And Republicans continue to stand up for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected.
Thank you, Leader. Whether fair or unfair, Leader Schumer is taking a lot of heat from members of your own party. Why do you think he is the right leader for this moment, and why do you think he should stay leader of Senate Democrats?
Yeah, as I've indicated, listen, Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats over the last 7 weeks have waged a valiant fight on behalf of the American people. And I'm not going to explain what a handful of Senate Democrats have decided to do. That's their explanation to offer to the American people. What we're going to continue to do as House Democrats, partner with our allies throughout America, is to wage the fight, to stay in the Coliseum, to win victories in the arena on behalf of the American people, notwithstanding whatever disappointments may arise. That's the reality of life. That's certainly the reality of this place. But we're in this fight for all the right reasons, because the extremism that has been unleashed on the American people is completely and totally out of control. Life hasn't gotten better for everyday Americans under Donald Trump and compliant Republicans. It's gotten worse. And the American people know it. And we've got to continue to stay in this fight until we end this national nightmare. And that's our commitment to the American people. We're in this fight until we end this national nightmare and can get back to a place where we continue America's long, necessary, and majestic march toward a more perfect union. Thank you.
No, sorry. I didn't know you were.